Hello. For Chapter 13, I'm going to focus on creating a positive learning environment. Having a positive learning environment for our students at any grade level is very important. There are many things that I'm going to go over that I learned from this section of our chapter that are important to having a positive classroom atmosphere. As an educator, we will need to keep in mind the individual variations of our students so that we can make a great learning environment for them while in our classroom. So this would include the student's self, social, cognitive, and moral development, learning differences, and culture. Our classrooms are bound to be diverse, so we need to plan for this when setting up a learning environment that will benefit all of our students. Students may become disruptive to the classroom if the content being taught is too easy for them or too hard. So this is just another thing to keep in mind when doing instructional planning. Another way to prevent disruptive behaviors is to motivate the students so the goals they have to work toward have prizes or just anything to work towards. So like tickets. So like in my practicum class, the students have a little board and they have good behavior. They clip up and it just keeps getting better and better for behavior. And so once they get to the very top tier, it's they contact their parents for good behavior and they get to wear a cape because their classroom is superhero themed. So that was kind of cool to see. Routines and procedures. The routines and procedures within a classroom are very important to make clear to all students. They describe how activities are accomplished in classrooms but are seldom written down. They're simply the ways that we get things done within the classroom. So our book talked about elementary teachers that have 20 to 30 students. They have to lead through different activities each day. And if they aren't clear procedures or routines, the students will waste a bunch of time asking silly questions that you'll have to answer to that could have been easily answered with a procedure or routine that they could be going over each day. And then for secondary students that are constantly switching classrooms throughout the day, the teacher must plan for the students challenging their authority. So some common routines that were brought up in the book. So some common routines that were brought up in the book included administrative routines, which is like taking attendance, student movement, talks about how the students enter and leave the classroom, go to the bathroom, etc. Housekeeping, which is like watering plants or putting papers in student mailboxes. Lesson running routines, such as how to collect assignments or return homework. Interactions between teacher and student, so how the student will get the teacher's attention when they need help. And lastly, when they talk among their peers, when it's okay to give help to their peers or to socialize and the level of loudness that they should be talking at. Rules. The rules are usually written down and placed somewhere within the classroom. They're generally the do's and don'ts, and they should be positive and observable. So specifically for elementary students, there are general rules that are mainly used, also given in the book. They include respect and be polite to all people. So when us as teachers go over the rules, we should make sure the students know what we mean by polite behaviors. So not hitting, fighting, or bullying, and what the polite behaviors would include. So waiting your turn, using manners, please and thank you. Be prompt and prepared. So again, the students should be studious throughout the entire day from when they walk in the door, between lessons, and when they are leaving. To listen quietly when others are speaking. So students should know this applies when the teacher is talking as well as other students. And then also obey all school rules. So whether or not the rules are posted in the classroom of the school, they should still abide by those. So if a school rule is no cell phones, and that applies in the classroom as well as within the halls and other teachers' classrooms. When going over the rules, just be sure to include examples, practice, and discussion to ensure that all students understand these rules. And then on to secondary. They're a little different than elementary because students are moving from classroom to classroom throughout the day. So bring all needed materials to class. So the teacher should specify the first week of school what should be brought to class each day. Be in your seat and ready to work when the bell rings. So sometimes teachers use this with an anticipatory set for the lesson each day. So the students could come in and have like a daily word that they have to do, or for older kids, obviously secondary, they would have like a paragraph possibly to write. Um, Next, we have respect and be polite to all people. So this includes fighting and bullying and in general classroom disruptions. Listen and stay seated while someone else is speaking. Again, this applies when the teacher as well as other students are talking. To respect others' property. This rule would include property of the schools, the teachers, and the other students. And again, obey all school rules, no matter where you are within the campus. They will always apply. So, when the rules or procedures are not followed within the classroom, you must decide how to take action when the rule is not obeyed. It is encouraged to use natural or logical consequences. So instead of punishing, have students redo, repair, or in some way face the consequences that naturally flow from their actions. Some examples our book gave was to separate the deed from the doer in your response. So the problem is the behavior, not the student. Emphasize to students that they have the power to choose their actions and to avoid losing control. Encourage student reflection, self-evaluation, and problem solving, and try to avoid teacher lecturing. And lastly, help students identify and give rationale for what they could do differently next time in a similar situation. These types of consequences will support their social and emotional development, but still let the student know they didn't follow the class rules or procedures. Who sets the rules and consequences? In most classrooms, teachers generally will set the rules, but in some cases, teachers will allow students to help decide what is expected from them. Some teachers believe this is an easier way to keep them accountable for their actions. So, in one of my other classes, a student talked about how in elementary school, they remember their teacher using a Bill of Rights. So this would be where the students all decide on the rules the classroom will have, and then they sign it at the bottom. So if they disobey one of the rules, the teacher can be like, oh, well, you signed it at the bottom, so you should be following the rules that we all made together. So it just holds them more accountable. Um, I guess just depending on how the teacher wants to manage their classroom would decide whether or not they want to have the students help determine the rules or if they would just do it on their own. Although if students do help determine the class rules, the teacher should make sure there's a sense of community within the classroom so the students can meaningfully contribute. Planning spaces for learning. A teacher must keep in mind the activities they are planning to teach and make sure the space within the classroom will support and invite that sort of activity. The space also may be set up to the students so they're able to respect others within the area. So our book talked about a school that painted its doors really bright colors so the younger students can recognize which classroom was theirs if they left for whatever reason. It could be considered their home and it was color coordinated inside. So in younger classrooms, it'd be more beneficial to have it super colorful and inviting, and it'd be more just better for younger kids as well as older kids. Probably not so much colorful and more content around the classroom because it might seem little kiddish when you're in sixth grade. Um, and then within the classroom, we can talk about arrangement. Personal territories are the physical setup of the room, the location of the desks, and how they influence learning. I think it's a given that those who sit closer to the teacher are generally more engaged than those who are in the back. So to prevent this from happening, a teacher can walk throughout the classroom and get closer proximity to students who are in the middle or towards the back. And also changing seating arrangements periodically throughout the school year will help with this as well. Um, Horizontal rows have some advantages compared to other arrangements. This type of setup is useful for independent seat work and presentations. They're also easier to have students work in pairs, clusters, and pairs. Clusters work best for students to have interactions and group work. Easier to have them collaborate and discuss with one another, but are a poor choice for classroom presentations. The fishbowl or stack is where the students sit close together, like on a rug in the front of the class. They should be used for short periods of time because they're often uncomfortable. And although sitting like this can make the class feel like as a big whole together, it's not a great idea for long periods of time. So for interest areas, they're influenced by the way a student will use each area. So in the book, I'm just going to go over the guidelines that the book gave for designing learning spaces because it gives a lot of really great examples. So for the first one, note the fixed features and plan accordingly. So remember the audiovisual center and computers need electrical outlets. So you want to prepare for that. Keep art supplies near the sink, small group work by a blackboard. Create easy access to materials and a well-organized place to store them. So if you have younger kids, of course, if they have materials they need to get out of cabinets, and you'll need to make sure those are in lower ones so they can get them themselves. Provide students with clean, convenient surfaces for studying. So put bookshelves next to the reading area and games by the game table. Avoid dead spaces and racetracks. Don't have all the interest areas around the outside of the room, leaving a large dead space in the middle. Arrange things so you can see your students and they can see all instructional presentations. Make sure you can see over partitions. Make sure work areas are private and quiet. Provide choices and flexibility, and try new arrangements, then evaluate and improve. So have a 2-week arrangement, then evaluate and change up how you have your students sit in the classroom. So for the first week of school, a poorly managed classroom would have very vague rules, inconsistent consequences, procedure differences, very unorganized, and filled with surprises. So not having an answer to a random question a student asks, that sort of thing. And then effective classroom management would look like organization, activities right away, rules, and signals. And then for the secondary classroom, the rules and procedures are established. So this would be for an effective classroom manager. The standards for academic work and behavior are stated. They follow student progress and they smile and like to have fun with their students. So this is my presentation of how to create a positive learning environment. I hope you all enjoyed it and can use these ideas in your future classroom if you are planning to become a teacher. Have a great weekend and go Hawks!